Hi everyone, Megan Dixon here, Director of Regional Development with RDA Orana. Yesterday we had some pretty good news, I think, with the federal government announcing and enabling the $130 billion JobKeeper payment, so that's now formalised. And you can stay up to date on those announcements and what it means to you as a business by heading on over to rdaorana.org.au/support and subscribing to our daily debrief. Now on to our program of See Orana Conversations. This one is with Leanne O'Sullivan, who is founder and director of Adventure Digital, a digital business agency based in regional New South Wales, servicing clients all over Australia and the Eastern Seaboard. Leanne is also one of the founding partners of Devil's Elbow Brewery and can often be seen out of normal business hours, servicing customers there. So Leanne, welcome to the programs. And I want to start with the very first question is, when do you sleep?
Well, at night time. at night time. So whenever I'm working, when the brewery was open, my shifts tended to be on the weekends. So I'd be down there on a Sunday afternoon, or I might be there on a Friday or a Saturday night, greeting customers or serving behind the bar, depending on how busy we were. But yeah.
So a little bit about both your businesses, and they're very different businesses in different industries, but I think it would be interesting to understand about both the businesses.
Okay. So my background, I've actually been in the digital space for over 20 years. So essentially most of my working life has been in that arena, starting out developing websites. And then what I do now is mainly involved around digital marketing and digital strategy. So we still do a bit of web work, but there's a lot more strategic work across a business's whole ecosystem. So looking at web or social or content marketing or search marketing. So it's quite an interesting industry, and I'm still learning new things all the time about that industry. And so that's my real job. That's my day job. My love job is with our brewery. So most people in the Dubbo region would have heard of Devil's Elbow Brewery. We're the first craft brewery to be set up in Dubbo, and it's a fantastic industry to be a part of. I've never been involved in hospitality before, so other than years ago when I was at uni, and you'd be working at a bar, but apart from that, I've never had any actual hospitality background, but my digital marketing experience has been fantastic to bring into this industry and to be able to set up all the things that I know a new business needs to have, which I often joke to people that they're my best client because they just do everything I say, or because I'm actually doing it all. So it's been wonderful to sort of be involved in a brand new startup and have like full reign to do, the web stuff, develop the social, develop the brand, develop all the messaging, do the things that I know a business needs to do. And thank goodness that we did, because, we already had an online store. Once we started canning, we've already got things in place that I know an e-commerce business needs to be doing behind the scenes, not just having that online shop. So, that's been good.
So, and Devil's Elbow, how old is that? What, the launch date when you opened?
We started, the brewery side of things started trading on the 1st of July last year. So we kicked off in the middle of winter, still in the grip of a horrific drought. So if you were to sort of look back and say, when would be the perfect time to start a new business in regional Australia, I don't think that July 2019 would have been the time that I would have said, hey, let's do this. Let's sink a lot of money with our other partners, create something from nothing, and then just start trading. So I think in hindsight, probably not the perfect time to open a business, but, we did. And we were coming out the other side of the drought. I think all of this, thank goodness we've had rain. I think that's just lifted people's spirits a lot. And I think that, I don't know where regional Australia would have been if the drought was at its deepest and we had this
as well
coronavirus business. Yeah.
Yeah. So how were you operating with both businesses prior to COVID-19?
So my agency business was working out of our office in Blue Ridge Business Park as normal. You know, we were there. I have a remote worker, and I've always had remote workers who are on the team, local people that moved away and still remain working for the business. So we've always been experienced with, you know, Zoom meetings and using Google Meet a lot. We have regular stand-ups and they're always via Google Meet every day. You know, a lot of our client work, because our clients are everywhere. So we're quite used to having video conferencing sessions. So that's what we were doing before all this started. The brewery obviously is a completely different story. You know, we were doing some online sales, obviously, but we weren't doing takeaway really at all in terms of food. But our online sales have been in place since November last year. Yeah.
And that's selling beer, the beer?
The beer, yep, online. So we've always had. We set up the online store last year in November, and we've been shipping beer all over Australia since then. Not in huge volumes. We're hoping, obviously, now to ramp up that volume now that everybody's at home and everybody's at home and spending a lot more time on the internet researching things. And that's been one of the things that I've been telling my clients. And you know, and I know we'll get into this in a moment, but that's one of the big that shift in. I've been saying it's like a confluence of the will and the way. Like in the past, whilst people always had a way of doing online stuff and they knew that it was there, I don't think there was a will for especially a lot of regional businesses. Quite resistant, reluctant. I need to do everything face to face. I'll only work with people who are local. It's too hard. All those kinds of excuses. Well, guess what? They've all just fallen away. So there is now strong will and the way they're coming together. And there's some amazing things that have been happening in a really short space of time.
So what's changed for you since COVID-19?
Well, my digital team, our agency, we're all working from home, and we have done for the last 3 weeks. So in terms of how we work, it's just a bit, I don't know, we've been having meetings in the afternoon, our stand-ups in the afternoon as well as the ones we have in the morning, because it just seems weird to work all day as a team, talk to each other in the morning, then not see each other. And then, so we kind of been having extra afternoon catch-ups. We use Slack as one of our communication channels. And that's something that my team's always been massive Slack users, but me being a bit older, I didn't really like using Slack. I wasn't a massive Slack person, but now I think it's really critical for us to stay, you know, keep the communications channels. So that's been really good to see why my team love it so much. So again, will and the way. I didn't really have the will to be bothered to use Slack. Now I am, so I can stay in contact with the team, you know, more regularly. The brewery, it's the cafe's running takeaways, you know, obviously like anybody in hospitality, such a shock, such a massive change to how you run your business. I mean, even when they started introducing social distancing, you know, we had to move all the tables, take tables out so that we had more space everywhere. You know, obviously when you're in hospitality, you have very stringent hygiene procedures. They still needed to be ramped up and explain to everyone how critical it was in terms of everything that we did, you know, to be careful. And now we're fully takeaway. You know, we have, like everywhere that you go now, like we have marks on the floor so that people know how to stand back and wait for the person in front of them to collect their coffee. You know, it is... I don't know that anybody really will get used to it. I mean, it depends how long it goes for, the lockdown sort of process, but it is different, significantly different. And I think as we go along, you just get better and more streamlined at these are the restrictions that are on us and how do we work with them to help be as productive as we can in the environment that we're finding ourselves in.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest challenge?
Okay, so I'll talk about both businesses. So in my business, initially I was a bit worried. That first week, I think like every business owner in the whole country was, and every person really in Australia, was the shock of the fact that it's really real. In my business, I've got a cruise line, a national cruise company. Well, of course, they're no longer a client. I have a travel company. They've walked back their work. I had an event gone. I had another business that their whole business model is around people coming to see them, and they can't really do what they do online in the way that they have transactions. It's a property development business, so that's been reduced in volume. So in that first week, I knew I'm going to lose all of that business straight away. And then there was the opportunities that appear. So since then, I've had people come to me saying, I need to do this, I need to do that. Like a business that I've been trying for ages to convince that they could turn their wholesale outlet into an online store, have, to absolute unbelievable success, which I always thought it would be a success. And they're going through the pains of how do we make this more streamlined, but it's a huge success. And I think there's going to be more of that opportunity there for my agency business, that people have seen this is the reality, here's the will, the way's always been there, now I'm going to go ahead and do it. So while some businesses it's going to be incredibly tough, and I know in the hospitality space, I wouldn't be surprised that some of these restaurants, some of these other businesses in that space that are shut may not reopen. I think that's the reality of all businesses everywhere. The retail trade that are shutting. If they don't have a big enough online store, if they haven't been doing the things to set up, remarketing strategies and thinking strategically about how they use Facebook advertising, for example, they may not be able to reopen. It just may not happen. And I think that they're the things that unfortunately are looming all over the place. I know for the brewery that it was a massive shock, because you've got the people factor, and you've just got all these staff that you can't employ, and you do all the things that you can do to try and keep as many people as you can. But the reality is that when your turnover is significantly curtailed in like that, you just don't have the capacity to keep them on. And even with, and this is the thing, I think our government has been amazing. I think once they, like everyone, there was the shock, there's the reality of the numbers, they obviously see more of that. I think we as a nation should have to be really proud of the leaders that we have at the moment, and the way that they obviously, I would imagine behind closed doors there'd be a lot of angst, a lot of the word I'm trying to think about is, I'm sure, I love how when they speak in a united voice. I'm betting behind the scenes there's lots of different kinds of conversations so that we get the best outcomes. I definitely think that the JobKeeper announcement is fantastic for business. And I do worry though, and I know this was the brewery's feeling, is that it's a long time to wait to get the cash. You have to carry the staff until you get the cash. If you don't have an income, how are you going to carry the staff? They're the realities, I think, for a lot of hospitality and tourism-based businesses. They may not have big reserves. Like, you've got to pay people and have them on your books before you get the money. Yeah. You don't just, you can't just say, oh yeah, I'm having them, but I'm not paying them. And I know there's a lot of conflicting stories out there around what the actual realities are. And now that the legislation's been passed, obviously the ATO is now going to go hell for leather developing all the guides and talking to, I've got accounting clients. They've been talking through what they know and how it's meant to work, and the concerns that they have for their clients about exactly that. The reality is you have to actually pay people something. And if you've got no income, how can you keep paying staff, actually paying them so that they can get the JobKeeper allowance? And I definitely think that that's something that not a lot of people are actually realising, that you have to actually pay people money each week right now, even though you have no income, in order to qualify for the JobKeeper allowance. So that's an issue, I think, for every single hospitality business in the country. I mean, the other side of that, I have a migration agent client, and the things that she was talking through with me are, you know, if you, like out here in regional Australia, we have a lot of temporary visa workers helping in a variety of agricultural businesses. Well, where do they sit in terms of, you know, they don't sit anywhere. Like, they're not going to obviously have jobs. They're not going to be, how do people hold on to them? Like, it's quite a complex thing as you start to unravel it. Like, you have this fabulous idea, which was the right thing, which I think it really was the right thing, but there's still a lag until the money opens up. And what happens until then? And how are people actually, like, there's more to the whole piece about that JobKeeper thing. It's not just, yeah, it's great and you can apply and it's, you know, you have to have a 30% turnover. All those things are fantastic. They're great. But the reality is, how do you actually pay somebody for the next, 5 weeks until you then get reimbursed, refunded all those wages? Like, well, not all those wages, but you're given $1,500 a fortnight, which is effectively, you know, it'd be $4,500 per person if you had them on the books right now, but you're not going to get that till the 26th of May when the BAS is due.
Yeah.
That's going to be very hard. Very hard.
And it's interesting because I think some of the early feedback that we're seeing is finances, you know, that's probably the principal, you know, concern that every business has, and that issue of carrying. I know I was on a hookup yesterday, and one of the responses was, have you heard that the banks are actually offering to, you know, provide that finance if a bank, you know, if a business doesn't have that sort of reserve to be able to pay. But for some people, they're not, you know, necessarily going to want to take on that debt in order to meet that obligation. So
plus,
and I think it's a very difficult conversation to have.
It absolutely is. And the other thing is, and this is I think really important, banks have not been lending money to business in the way that they were 5 years ago. They have not been lending money to business. So whilst it's great, I think, that that the government stepped in and is going to support, you know, 50% of the debts, like you'll be able to, the banks will effectively get it at a ridiculous rate. I reserve judgment that they're actually going to come to the party. Whilst, again, yes, what I think they are doing in relation to freezing mortgages is wonderful. You know, I think the banks are doing a lot, but I just cannot see that, even exactly your point, if businesses are prepared to take on some debt to get over the hump, because we don't really know how long the hump will be, but there's that one point, will they take on the debt? But number two, how much are the banks really going to lend when they haven't been lending? And they haven't.
It's a valid point, Leanne. And I think that, you know, that it shows, and it's a very tangled web in terms of the different things and different touch points, both for a business, but even for government and even for institutions like the banks. And, you know, the reason that, you know, lending started to actually change was because of that the Royal Commission. So it is a very tangled web in terms of putting things together. So I just, and I know we could talk all day about this, but in terms of what's happened and COVID-19, what's a key takeaway for you from this that you can apply to your two businesses?
I think the things that I've always thought about business owners and entrepreneurs is that we are, how important being resilient in yourself and backing yourself is. I think that's so critical. And I also think that, you know, right now we're seeing more than ever that the most important things that your business needs to be is agile. And I think that in the past, especially in regional Australia, there's a big swag of regionally based businesses that I don't think are agile, that have been very happy to be how they've been for a long time. I don't put ag in that parcel because I think our agricultural industry in the main is highly agile, highly adaptive, very creative, very innovative, and have to be because they've been at the cutting edge of, exposed markets and prices that are all over the place and the vagaries of weather. So they are always, I think, in the main, been highly innovative, agile, very resilient. But then I think there's a big chunk of other businesses in the regions that I don't think have been agile in that way. And I think for us and for me, looking and working with a lot of small businesses in particular, that agile thinking is so important. That ability to make a call and follow through with it is really, really important. And also that ability to back yourself to go, yes, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to accept that it's not perfect and it's not easy, but it just needs to be done. And that's the thing that's, I think, what will come through this is that, yep, it's not perfect, but it has to be done. And so we're just going to do what we need to do as best we can, but we're going to keep moving forward rather than thinking I'm just going to hang on to this old approach.
Yeah, and I think the comment that you made, one of the things that's been in my head, especially for this region, is that what I see is that we have been a very face-to-face region. So we do business on our relationships, and obviously COVID, is changing that in terms of how we, the face-to-face is gone. So there's a whole new way of doing business in terms of that. So there is it will have an impact.
But it's not a new way of doing business.
No.
It's only a new way of doing business out here.
Yeah.
And that's something, I have clients all over the place. I think that is going to be a big challenge for some businesses out here, this new way. And I've been astounded at the businesses that have grabbed it, and you can already see how they've made that flip and they're charging off in a fresh direction because that's the kind of people that they are. That's great to see. And I would hope that more and more businesses would do that.
So, that's really nice segue in terms of the next question, which is, what's something great that you've seen or heard about happening that's been in response to COVID-19? What's something to shout out about?
Well, I think one of my clients, who, that's what I was saying earlier, who I knew had a online store in their business model, and because it was a small part of their business, and it still is a small part of their business, but they turned that around. And I'll give you a shout out, Sarah Jane Fine Foods. They literally emailed me on the Sunday and said, Leanne, we need to get our online store up. And we built them a website in 48 hours. Because they knew that their staff were at risk in terms of handling lots of customers. They couldn't handle the volumes. They wanted a better way of controlling orders. It's absolutely gone so amazingly well. It's unbelievable. And they're going through some of those normal pains that you go through when you have an e-commerce store, when you transition from people just coming in to handling the sheer volume of orders. Because as we know, you can't buy flour anywhere. You can't buy it at any of the supermarkets. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. We had friends in New Zealand that we were catching up with. They were telling us the same thing. You cannot buy flour in the supermarket in New Zealand either. I tell them I know a great place that they can get their flour from. They just need to organise a courier to have it shipped over to New Zealand. But that is an amazing thing. And like that team, they got their products, their photos, they got everything that we needed. My team just focused it all. Like literally, we had our meeting in the morning. I said, guys, you've got to drop everything and we've got to do this thing. We've got 2 days to get it done. So everybody who was involved in the project just went bang. And it just goes to show that people can actually be that agile business that they need to be. It's just sometimes we need that, but they were amazing. And I mean, there's lots of amazing things about that entire Fernie's business. Like, there truly is. They are an amazing business. But that's something that they did in amongst all the other stuff that they have going on in their business right now, changes to delivery structures, a whole heap of things. they're amazing. It was an amazing thing to witness, and it's just great. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And I actually, one of my friends is one of their customers, and they did a shout out and a thumbs up to them last, about 2 days ago. So that makes sense now. I didn't understand what it was about, but that now makes sense in terms of that shout out as a customer. So, Leanne, thank you very much. Before we wrap, I've got a fast five for you.
Okay.
Yep, so, how many toilet rolls do you have at home?
Not enough.
Yeah.
I think we've got 12.
Yeah, that's good. What are you hoarding?
Flour.
Really?
Well, yes, I am, and now I'm doing some more baking. But I just picked up my order from Sarah Jane Fine Foods today.
Fantastic. What are you missing the most?
Just missing walking around at lunchtime. Like, I feel like I'm a lot more sedentary just sitting in my office. So I am missing that movement. And it's also missing how when you see somebody out, a friend, if you're out, say, at the supermarket, going up to them and giving them a kiss hello. Yeah. It feels weird. Yeah.
What's your favourite app for staying in touch?
Zoom.
Are you using that for family as well?
Yes, we've got 3 family conversations on the go each week, so we can just touch base with, and we've had a couple of friend conversations. So yeah, it's been great.
Fabulous. And when the restrictions lift, what's the first thing that you're going to do?
I don't know. I just think I'd like to actually go into my own brewery and have a beer.
Fabulous. That's awesome. I'll come and have one with you.
I think a lot of people will be. We can't wait for that to happen.
Leanne, thank you very much for your time today. In closing, just a reminder to people who may be watching this, head on over to rdaorana.org.au/support, and you can find a whole heap of resources and referral links to help you with navigating through this COVID-19 pandemic that we're all facing at the moment. Thank you very much.